Hello my friends. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at a few plugins for Davinci Resolve provided to me by Motion VFX. So without further ado, let us indulge my friends. Okay my friends, so today we're going to be taking a look at this plugin in particular, which is mChannel Clean by Motion VFX. As you can see, the price is $89. Oof, it's quite a financial commitment, but we'll be going over today whether I personally think it's worth it or not. If we scroll down, we can actually see what this plugin contains: the intros, the social media templates, and it gives you a visual preview, which is nice. Some titles, we've got lower thirds, add-ons, and even some backgrounds. So let's go over the installation process and then we can dive right into Davinci Resolve. So once you've purchased or acquired your plugins, you'll be then prompted to download this, which is mInstaller. Now this installation process is a lot more simple than I thought. Effectively, all you need to do is as followed. Log in. You'll then be presented with all of your plugins that you've purchased and acquired. You press install, you wait a few seconds, my face is covering it, but it will then say installation complete, and it is literally that simple. Okay, so licenses. As you can see, you have two licenses right here. Now my concern was, once you have these two licenses, do you need to purchase the plugins again? Thankfully, that's not the case. It just means you can only have two licenses active at one time. So if you have a third machine, you need to deactivate one of the two licenses. And the way you do that is as followed. You click onto the amount of licenses used. You'll then click onto one of the licenses and the hardware that you'd like to deactivate it from. You press deactivate twice. And as you can see, it says 0 licenses used. So you can then log in onto whatever computer or device that you want, press activate, and as you can see, fantastic. Okay, so now we've got that out of the way, let us dive into Davinci Resolve 17. So here we are in Davinci Resolve 17. Oh, welcome. And yes, we are in familiar territory. So where do you now go to find these plugins? Very simple, my friends. All you need to do is navigate to the top left corner and go to effects. And all you need to do is literally scroll down and keep scrolling until you can find plugins that you just installed. So right here, we have mChannel Clean. Now there's something that I personally would do. The first thing I would do is click onto this icon at the top left corner. This will expand the effects view, so we can actually see a lot more of the plugins. The next thing that I would do is go to Toolbox, which is the top level, and I'd actually type in the name of the plugin. This is so that I don't need to be scrolling for a long time to find the plugins. And just like that, we have the plugins which are previewing back in real time. Fantastic. Okay, great. So I'm going to go over a few of the plugins that I personally use and also show you how much customization there is or is not. So without further ado, let us indulge, my friends. Okay, so for this example here, I'm actually going to use this as a background to show and display a different clip. So what I would do is I'd scroll down until I find a background that I like. This one here looks great. I would then drag it onto the clip. Just like that, we already have a background which is animated in real time. So the next thing I would actually do to this is I'd go to the clip that I have on the right. I duplicate it by holding down Alt and dragging it up. I would then open my inspector at the top right corner because I want to scale this down. And you'll see what I'm doing in just a second. I'm going to my transform controls, bring the zoom down. I would then open my cropping tab and just crop the top and the bottom by 80. And as simple as that, we have a very clean and visually aesthetic looking clip. And this is just one of many examples of how I would use this. But what customization do we have and how do you go about accessing the customization? So first I'm going to mute this clip at the top so we can see the background better. I'm going to right click, I'm going to go to enable click and disable this. So right now it's disabled and we can just see the background. Now to access the customization controls, you just need to open your inspector, click onto your clip. If it's an effect or an overlay, the customization options will be in effects. However, if it is a title, a lower third, or a social media template, you'd need to go to video, but we'll get into that in just a second. So since it is a background, I'm going to go to effects. And as you can see here, we're greeted with the customization options. Now by default, you'll notice, which is pretty consistent across the board, there's going to be an in and there's going to be an out point. This will effectively determine whether you want your clip, your video, your overlay, your add-on to be animated in or animated out. If I uncheck this inbox, you can see straight away that it no longer animates in at the beginning of the clip. So all these controls here do, which is pretty consistent across the board, is determine whether you want your clip to be animated in or out. Next, you can see we are presented with element controls and background controls. So expanding element controls, you can see we can adjust many parameters here to the color of the dots, to the size, to the opacity, even the rows, and spread, which is really interesting and good to know. Something else which is good to know is since we are in DaVinci Resolve, they'll use the DaVinci Resolve convention. So what do I mean by that? If, for example, I wanted to reset the spread of the dots back to its default, all I need to do is hover over the name and double click, and just like that, it resets back to its default values. It will be the same for any of these icons, for example, the size. Double click onto dot size, just like that, is reset back to its default values. That simple, that easy. Not only this, my friends, but we can actually, if we wanted to, keyframe these options, because on the right hand side here, we actually have keyframes. So if you wanted further customizations and want to make these add-ons look more like your own, actually further animate it yourself. Now, if this level of customization was not enough, by the way, this is a Fusion composition. Now, this is good and bad for two reasons. The bad is because Fusion compositions are really heavy. And why this may be a bad thing is if I grab, for example, this and I play it back, you can see we're actually presented with a red line at the top. And that's because Fusion titles are a bit more performance and resource heavy on your computer. So you may need to wait for this red line to go blue and wait for it to render. However, depending on the specification of your computer, this may be faster or slower. As I've been speaking, it seems to have done just like that. If I press spacebar, we now have a subscribe social media icon on top of our background rendered out. Fusion compositions, they're a bit heavy, they may be a bit slow. The advantage, however, is the customization. Now, if I go back to my background clip and I go back to my effects, in the inspector window right here, we have this icon. So if I click onto this, it will automatically take us to the Fusion tab. And just like that, we can add effects and customizations further onto the Fusion clip, which is actually mind-blowing. What's also interesting to know, which I don't know if Motion VFX want you to know, is if you hover your mouse over the add-on, you're actually presented with all of the components which make up the add-on. Unfortunately, I haven't found a way that you can actually dive into this to reposition things. However, this is not the end, my friends. As I said, it being a Fusion composition, you can add onto this. So for example, if I press Control Spacebar and I add something as crazy as light rays, we now have light rays onto the image. I'm going to increase the brightness and I'm going to add another effect such as scan lines, for example. Increase the frequency. This looks super crazy. I'm going to change the color. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the edit tab and you'll be able to notice that we have the effect updated in real time. Is it going to play back smoothly? Yes, no? Oh, a little bit. I mean, I didn't expect it to play back smoothly since it's a Fusion composition, but it didn't do too bad. Now, that was the amount of customization you would have for something such as a background. But what about text? So we're going to be taking a look at this social media template. And this is very interesting to me for a few reasons. So to customize this, we open the inspector, and since it is a title, it's no longer located as an effect, but just on a video, and you'll be presented with the customization options. Now, something that I thought was really interesting is if we go to logo controls, you can see we're presented with logo type. Now, this is crazy to me because you can actually change what logo is inside the social media template. Now, a few of the titles add a bit more customization than we saw with the backgrounds. For example, if we go to content controls, we can change the positioning of where this is located. Not only this, we can change the scale. And remember before that I said there's keyframes on the right hand side here. So if you were not happy with how it animates by default, you could further do customizations and keyframes to animate it more yourself, which is good to know if you wanted to. If not, drag and drop seems to work fine. You're next presented with text and element controls. So I'm going to run over that very briefly. Text controls work as you would expect. You can change the text to whatever you want. Not only this, but changing the font happens in real time. Thank you, Davinci Resolve 17 update. That's great to know. It's good to know. You can change the color, the scale, a lot of the generic transform and text controls that you would expect you're able to customize, which is good to know. Now I'm just going to show you a few of the plugins which really stood out to me on this pack. The first one, of course, was the background, which I showed you earlier, which is this clean background here. I really like it, adds a whole nother visual element. The second is actually this social media icon, which appears on the left-hand side. I like the way it animates in, which is great. The third, which is really interesting to me, is something called a progress bar. So if I go all the way to the top, I believe there's something here that says M channel clean progress. And as you can see, there's a white bar that's appearing around the video. Now this is super helpful if you have a social media video, for example, and you want to visually display how long the video is going to be. All you need to do is go to mChannel Clean Overlay, drag it onto the clip, and just like that, automatically, it will give you a visual indicator of how long the video is going to be. Okay, so here we have a social media clip that I'm going to upload, and effectively it's me using my face and the facial capture data to drive a character that I created, in an environment that I created, in a scene that I created, all in real time, live, by the way, which is crazy. And I'm switching the cameras as I'm doing all of these at the same time. So this is this is going to be a separate video in itself, but this is something that I would like to share onto social media. Now, the problem is it doesn't give you an indication of how long this video is going to be. So this is exactly where I'd use mChannel Clean Overlay Progress. If I grab this and I put it over the clip just like that, personally would click onto this, go to effects, and I'll change the color to something like purple or maybe even red just to see. This looks good, so let me see how purple looks. That looks great too. And just like that, no, actually I think I prefer red. Just like that, we have a visual representation. Now, something that you may have noticed immediately is this automatically conformed to the aspect ratio of my timeline. Before I was in a 16:9 aspect ratio, in 1920 by 1080, and here I'm in a 1:1 aspect ratio, and the plugins have automatically conformed. And that's something that I thought was pretty interesting, and it saves you a lot of hassle. I'm going to scroll down to find one of the titles that I like the most, which is this, Clean Title 2. If I drag this on top, unfortunately I'm going to have to wait a few seconds because it is a fusion composition, and as you can see, if I zoom into the clip, there's that red line. So if I try to play it back smoothly right now, I don't think it will play. We're getting about 10 frames. Okay, it's rendered out. So if I play it back, as you can see, it's conformed automatically to the aspect ratio of the clip. So my friends, that was just a quick look at mChannel Clean. There's actually a whole host of plugins in this pack that I have not even covered yet. And I'm really pleased with how fast you're able to drag and drop clips in. So we've only gone over mChannel Clean, but there's actually a whole bunch more plugins that exist, such as mTuber, which has stuff like backgrounds. You have callouts for YouTube videos, animated intros, YouTube callouts, end screens. There's mTitle Cinematic, which has a whole host of different cinematic titles that can be used, dragged onto the clip just to add another whole visual identity, which will also have the same level of customizations that we've seen before. And you can still also go into the Fusion tab to add further customization if you wanted to, which is really good to know. So there's actually a whole host, that's just a soft glow that I've added. There we go. There's a whole host of plugins that they provide. Now, here are my thoughts and the disadvantages that I found. Disadvantages. Now, one huge disadvantage that I think we've seen throughout this video is the fact that they're fusion compositions. As I go in and I add a plugin, for example, or a title, for example, the moment I drag this in, straight away we can see that I may not be able to play this back immediately and smoothly. Even though I don't necessarily need to wait, it generally doesn't take more than a few seconds for these clips to render. However, during the editing process, you really don't want to be taken out of the flow, and a few seconds can really make a difference. The second disadvantage that I would say is probably the price. The average price for these plugins are anywhere between $89 to $99. Now, do I think the price is worth it? Personally, yes. However, $89 to $99 is quite a financial commitment for a lot of people, and it is quite expensive. Do I think these plugins are worth it? The short answer is yes. If throughout the video today you've seen a use case for these plugins and you can see yourself using them for specific things, for example, YouTube videos, events, cinematics, short films, you name it. If you can see a use for these plugins, 100%, I personally believe these plugins are worth it. However, if throughout these videos you thought these plugins were cool, but you don't necessarily have a use for it right now, I would say don't go and buy them. I think personally, in my opinion, it's good enough to know that the moment you have a use for these, you know where to go. You know you can go to Motion VFX the moment you want to create YouTube videos, or you're creating a cinematic and there's a title that you want. Just knowing you can go to Motion VFX is more than good enough. Okay, my friends, so that's the conclusion of this video. If you like this video, please share, subscribe, comment, like. If you want me to make more videos like this, or there's a specific plugin that you'd like to see or want me to dive a little deeper into, then let me know. If you absolutely did not like this video also, my friends, please let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you very much for your time. Peace.